Hello, party people. Greetings to all of you who have been Black Genius fans before, and greetings to you if you're seeing Black Genius for the first time. My name is Olori Lowade. I am the founder of Noir Labs, where we inspire and operationalize liberation from within through art, tech, and community building. We help build liberated futures for individuals, organizations, and growing institutions. And Black Genius is our podcast where we get to share the stories of the world's future Black leaders in their own words. So I'm really excited to be back on camera and to have an amazing guest with me today. And there's going to be a lot more Black Genius episodes coming up. So you can subscribe, follow, do all the things to make sure that you stay updated. We have interviewed incredible visionaries in the past, and you can go to the Noir Press YouTube page to see past interviews. If you go to noirpress.org/join, you'll be on our mailing list and you'll get to see all the amazing content and news and information that we are sharing out into the world. Our guest today is Lande Yoosuf. She is a filmmaker, novelist, and artist in all dimensions. She's a producer, and she is the co-founder of Black Film Space, where she helps Black artists, Black creators, Black storytellers amplify their voices. And a lot of the people who have participated in Black Film Space, events and workshops and programs have gone on to write for television and film. And so she's truly making an incredible impact across the globe. And I'm going to just share with you, before we bring Lande on, I'm going to share with you a little bit, because people have often asked, how do we find our Black geniuses, or how do we choose our Black geniuses? I want to share with you a little bit about how this came about and how we know that somebody is a Black genius, or who makes it or gets kind of, chosen to be a part of this platform. So I started my PhD at Cambridge in 2019, and I was having amazing conversations with truly visionary people just across my network. And I was blown away by some of the stories that I heard and, the conversations that I was having. And I said, you know what, these conversations need to be accessible to others outside of, the two of us, right? These conversations need to be accessible to the world. And so the podcast started at the height of the pandemic in May of 2020. That's when we did our first live stream, but we started interviews before that. And so since then, we interviewed Alex Sato in AI. We've interviewed Ian Aboyeji, founder of Andela, co-founder of Andela and Flutterwave. We have interviewed Wumi Olaya, founder of Wow Wow brand. So many incredible creators. And what makes us, kind of excited to talk to these people is that they are passionate about liberation. They're passionate about making an impact on the globe. The work that they do is very, very thoughtful and very impactful and very intentionally supporting ecosystems and building ecosystems where you're, moving economic resources across the globe and across the diaspora and across the continent of Africa, and really building that economic liberation that we all dream of. So without too much ado, I'm going to bring Lande on, because we want to do our news from the Black globe, but I'm going to include Lande in this because she's also Nigerian. We're going to be talking a little bit about Nigeria. So please snap your fingers, clap your hands, and help me welcome Lande Yoosuf to the studio. Let me see if I can get you up here. Here we go. There we go. Hey. Okay, you're muted. I'm going to unmute you. Oh, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. I think I'm off mute now, right?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. Welcome. I'm excited.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here and for making the time. I know you are on your, super intense grind schedule getting this book out to the world. So I about your book and your films and all of that. And you're in Brooklyn as of now, right?
Yep. Born and bred, still residing.
Born and bred. So we're going to talk about your childhood and, growing up in Brooklyn and becoming a filmmaker, novelist, producer, all these things. But before we even go into that, I want to just kind of touch on the moment, just talk on what's happening in the world right now. I don't know how closely you've been following. I know I've shared some stuff on the Nigerian election, and I just want to kind of get your thoughts on what's happening.
Oh, I think it's another reiteration of Nigeria's core dysfunction, which is political instability, right? And corruption, and just the exercising of complete impunity. And then on top of that, our own taking on of like colonialist ideology that someone from another ethnic group is an adversary, when in reality the systems that have plagued Africa for decades and centuries is the real enemy. You know, we're just experiencing the results of those, you know, initial I guess tragedies imposed in our community. So it's just like more of the same, which is a bit disappointing. You know, I know people want to challenge the president that was allegedly elected, and I hope that there's success with that. But I just know, I'm a member of the Nigerian diaspora, so I can't even imagine what it's like living there and having to yet again deal with another heartbreaking outcome of an election where people feel like someone wasn't fairly elected, or like the due process of, you know, politics wasn't exercised properly. And regardless of who's voted in, I just wish that took place, and that's like really regrettable and unfortunate. However, I do feel like Nigeria is going to reach a place of sovereignty. I don't know. I hope I'm alive to see it, and that's my wish. And you know, I think that Nigeria has enough brilliance and talent that is going to overcome a lot of what we're dealing with now as a nation. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. You know, I have to say that I am quite passionate about Nigeria's liberation and truly excited for this movement that's happening right now. I have never believed in democracy until now. I mean, looking at the mobilization of millions of Nigerian youth, 70% of the Nigerian population is under 30, in case you didn't know, for those listening. And, you know, the election of Peter Obi as president is truly, you know, it truly is due to the mobilization of the youth and his ability to speak to the hearts and minds of the Nigerian masses. And so our hearts are with Nigeria. And I just have to make sure that those who are not well informed pay close attention. We've been posting about it on our pages. Our last newsletter, which is linked in North Press's stories on Instagram. If you go to North Press's Instagram, you'll be able to access yesterday's newsletter, in which we broke down what actually happened. And I'll give you like a 1-minute rundown. Basically, the Nigerian masses elected Peter Obi as president, Peter Obi of the Labour Party. There was scheduled to be an election this Saturday for gubernatorial positions, which the current government pushed back. So although Peter Obi was elected with tons of data, because there was live voting data uploaded to apps, tracked and visualized for everyone to see. There were live Twitter spaces documenting the voices of Nigerians on ground and all over the world, literally for hours on end. The Twitter space that we referenced in our newsletter yesterday opened on February 24th and has continued up until today. They've been stops, the space has crashed, there've been attacks on the space, and yet the Peter Obi USA Save Nigeria Twitter space continues to hold space for Nigerians to connect, to cry, to share their burdens, to share what's happening, and to share why they so desperately want new governance, and are not concerned with the ethnicity, but they are concerned with the amount of vision, the amount of passion that leadership for the Nigerian people. So I'm very excited, and I'm claiming a victory for all Nigerians, because that victory will apply to all Black people across the globe. Because
I agree.
A free Black polity on the richest continent on the planet, all Black people everywhere will ultimately become free. So I just hope that if you don't know about it, you find out about it, you get connected, and you support the Nigerian masses in our fight for a new Nigeria. All of that being said, so you said you were born in Brooklyn to Nigerian parents.
Yes.
So tell us about growing up in Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn did you grow up in?
I grew up in Flatbush, and my parents immigrated to the United States post-colonialism, post-civil rights and Immigration Act enactment. So it was the early 1970s. So they saw a lot, right? And that informed where they wanted to raise us and how they wanted to raise us. So I grew up in New York in a Caribbean and Black American neighborhood. And I had that socialization experience, especially in like school and like just in the neighborhood and neighbors and stuff. But I also had like this community of Nigerian American families as well. So people who like my parents immigrated to the United States around the same time, whether they knew them back in Nigeria or met them here. And we all kind of like congregated frequently on the weekends and holidays. So that kept me connected to my identity when I was not, when I outside of like the school and typical social settings. So I kind of had like this dual experience and upbringing, right? Like I grew up in a Nigerian household, like Nigerian Muslim Yoruba, right? But then I also grew up in this like Pan-African setting, basically, because everybody was Black, but we were from different parts of the world. And I think one thing that was really common, especially in a place like New York, where people come to like become something, even for those of us that may have been, like Black American or maybe second generation American or whatever, a lot of us had migration as part of our family lineage. So there was always this desire to establish oneself in New York. And I think that really defined a lot of us. So like I had friends from the Caribbean or Afro-Latino friends, parents from Panama, whatever. And again, it was like, we're coming to New York to build a legacy. I had friends who were like, my grandmother's from Virginia or South Carolina, but they migrated to New York, or to Harlem or Brooklyn or whatever. We're here to reestablish a new, version of our lineage. So it felt like, and a lot of times my parents would exchange information with other parents that kind of had the same agenda. So a lot of times it was like, oh, did you hear about this program? Did you hear about this school? How's your kid doing? What resources can we exchange? And I really, really loved that about my setting. So it was like the hood, but like I wasn't, of the hood. I was of this, like, I was my upbringing was really contained in these spaces that I described. Right. Like even though around the corner I had classmates that I knew were selling drugs, I didn't have that upbringing experience. Like I knew not to engage with that because I was fortunately sheltered through these spaces that my parents insisted I engage in. So yeah.
So were there fundamental experiences in your childhood in Brooklyn that shaped who you ultimately became, that made you decide that you wanted to tell stories, that you wanted to be a filmmaker, that you wanted to be a novelist? Can you remember the moment where you were like, this is what I want to do? And how did your environment kind of, influence that?
Well, Nigerian culture is very patriarchal, right? And I'm the youngest child. I'm also female, right? And I am in a lot of ways different from a lot of the other kids in my family. So a lot of times it's kind of like, what's up with Lande? So I spent a lot of time I don't want to say by myself, but it's true. Like I really fully explored my imagination. I spoke to myself a lot as a child. I was always playing with toys and kind of directing them. Like, we're going to do soap opera today. And I would like have all of them like, play out some crazy scene or something. So I think that storytelling bug was already there. And then on top of that, I read a lot of books. Like I was constantly reading from like the age of 7, 8 years old and reading like adult books or like books for like college students. So I think those two things combined really expanded my imagination and my thirst to like imagine things beyond what I was being introduced to in my environment. I mean, that was sufficient too, but I also always yearned for something bigger. And I think it's based on like being comfortable with expressing my imagination outward and then pouring back into it with literacy and things like that. And also some television and film as well.
Wow. So you went to Brooklyn College and you studied television and radio, right? Yes. So after, having this type of upbringing and kind of, naturally being a storyteller, you made this decision to study media in college. How did that go over with your parents? Since you're the youngest, it might have been a little easier, but I just want to hear like how your parents responded to that.
Not very good at first. They were upset. They were like, "You're too smart for the entertainment industry. Why don't you be an architect? Why don't you be an architect like your dad?" And I was just like, ugh. Like I like architecture. I actually really like architecture, but it's not what I want to do professionally. So my brother was the one that was like, "Look, don't listen to them. Like, figure it out, And then also my classmate, she said to me, she was like, this was in high school. She was like, "You talk a lot. You should do it like you should do media." And I was like, "Well, how do you know that?" And she's like, "I did a personality test online." I'll never forget her. Martha Koutsogianopoulos. She's Greek. So I went online, I did the test. I had the same personality as Oprah Winfrey. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Screw it.
Okay.
And like Jerry Seinfeld and all these other people.
Okay.
I was like, I'm gonna be in entertainment. I'm gonna do this. Cause I kind of already knew that I wanted to do it, but I just was scared, typical first gen insecurities. So I think that encounter plus the test just solidified it. And I told my parents, I said, look, I'm gonna prove to you guys that I'm serious about this. So just give me time. So I started interning my freshman year. I did that in addition to taking like 18 credits a semester and working. I mean, I worked tirelessly. And I think over time, my parents were like, okay, she really wants this. Let's give her space to kind of, figure it out. And they're not supportive. Yeah. I mean, they're, kind of like, what's going on? Like, why aren't you on TV yet? But I'm like, I'm on TV, just not at the scale you want. So just give me, I'm doing my thing. Like,
but you've worked behind the scenes. So you worked in reality TV. So you've done some work with MTV, done some work with A&E, NBC. So tell us about like your first, entertainment gig, your first paid gig, whether it was in college, out of college, where you were like, okay, I'm on my way. It's happening.
So that's an interesting story. So my department, the television radio department, was like, oh, you can't intern until you had 90 credits. And I was like, well, I'm basically going to be a senior. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, you know what? I went to the economics department. I went to the chair and I said, listen, I need to take some electives as internships. Can you give me credits? And he was like, sure. Just make sure you write an essay at the end of the semester. I was like, bet. So I started to intern from like freshman year. And those internships helped me because I was like, I'm not going to intern at MTV until my last year so I could get a job there. And my plan worked. My last semester of college, I interned at MTV. They hired me like the day after I graduated. And then from there, I just started to freelance at different companies.
What did you do for MTV? What was your first job with them? And what was your first internship role?
So my first job with MTV, I was logging tapes for the show.
It was what does that mean? What does that mean for the ladies?
So basically, it's so boring. Basically, you have to put a tape inside. This was like early 2000s. So I had to put a tape inside of a television and literally just type everything that everyone was saying.
Wow.
It was so boring, but I was like,
what
whatever.
Shows did you? The MTV shows would have been entertaining. What shows? Did
you it was a show. Oh my god, I forgot the name of the show, but it replaced Pimp My Ride, and the show ended up like not working out. Okay. But they were trying to replace Pimp My Ride. I think something happened with exhibit or something. And then yeah, I did that, and like I would have to be on call. They'd be like, "Oh my god, we just came back from a shoot. You got to come and log tapes." And I was like, "All right, whatever, yeah." So that was my first job out of college. My first internship was through my brother. He had a classmate at his school because he's a couple years older than me. His former classmate was working in the legal department at Miramax. I said, whatever, I don't care. Just get me in there, like whatever. So she gave me an internship in the business affairs department at Miramax. And at 19, I registered that, oh my God, nobody here is Black except for security, cleaning staff, and the mailroom. So I got to hustle. I got to grind every semester. I got to intern. Like my resume has to be perfect. Wow. I registered that at such a young age. And that's why I was so aggressive with pursuing my job. And thank God, it paid off with me getting the job at MTV.
So what did you do after MTV? What came next?
I actually bounced around at MTV for about 4 years, working on different shows and eventually got into casting. Someone was like, are you interested? I was just like, look, I just want a job. I want to work in this industry, whatever. That ended up being the pilot. But 16 and pregnant. Yeah. And I had to like pursue hospitals, schools, doctors' office. It was like parents, like it was like constant campaigning. And I felt like, oh wow, my experience in retail is really helping me because this is kind of like sales. And I knew that like personally, like a lot of the work I was doing didn't really resonate with me. So I bounced around at different networks like that. Like I went to A&E, NBC, Universal. I worked for a lot of like small boutique production houses that produce stuff for larger spaces. I worked for large production companies. I did talk. I worked at the Steve Harvey Show for a couple of months. And I was like, all right, I'm learning. I'm moving up the ladder. I ended up, my last like full-time job in reality was at a production company. And I was the head of development casting at that company. And my goal was to eventually get to the top and pivot to scripted narrative projects. But I just was so stressed out and so unfulfilled with what I was doing creatively. Even though I was learning a lot. And I was like, I don't think I can stomach this anymore. I'm like getting sick. I'm depressed. I feel like this was not my mission in media. You know, I want to influence and impact people with my work in media. I don't really want to just regurgitate content just for the sake of doing it. So that's when I started to like write on the side. But it took me a long time to get to that place, almost 10 years.
Wow.
So yeah.
So you're talking about 10 years from like you starting MTV until your last like reality TV job. Because I was gonna ask you like, well, how did you feel? Like what was the thing about reality TV that made you feel unfulfilled?
Oh my God, where do I even
One thing.
I didn't really like the way that we developed talent. I felt like it was a bit dehumanizing. Like, I get it. We have to be objective in terms of ratings and sales and things like that. But it just felt like this person is more nuanced than what we're trying to put the box that we're putting them in, you know? So even though it's reality television, you still are selling a particular narrative, right? And then also, I was tired of the lack of diversity in my workplace. Because it does, especially in creative fields, it really, really impacts the way that you respond to talent. You know, it's such a subjective business. So my cultural and social lens is going to be very different from a lot of my colleagues. And I just felt like I wasn't being understood in that vein. I'm like, this is a show, like this is something, like I'm telling you there's something here, but they wouldn't see it. So the assumption was that I wasn't competent when it really was just that, you know, you look at the world differently. And if you're so outnumbered, you know, that it makes it hard every day to show up.
That reminds me of a conversation we had where we were talking about, you know, producing Nigerian American content.
Yeah.
Where you basically, because you have a book, Kofo, which everybody can go out and get. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the book sites, right? It's doing extremely well. Just the first few pages, I was just like, wow, like this is a story that's never been told, you know?
Thank you.
And so we need more Kofos, but please go out and get Kofo. KO-FOE. But we were having a conversation about Nigerian American stories on television. Yeah. And you were basically telling me that studios, even till now, even as much as Chimamanda, Yvonne Orji, all of these like huge Nigerian American artists are making waves and making space for us in media, studios still don't recognize the Nigerian American audience as a real thing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I was told that I should choose Nollywood or Black American stories. And I was like, well, I'm not a full member of either community, and my storytelling does not, like, it includes members of both communities, but the perspective is mine, which is a hybrid. And I was just like, why don't you see the business potential in this? Like, I don't understand the hesitancy. You know, they're investing, like these streamers and platforms are investing a lot on the continent, which is great. But I'm like, what about the diaspora? Like, we're a viable audience. We're like we have a huge population globally, right? When you think about Western society and the presence of Africans, and then also amount of disposable income, then coupled with descendants of the same land, Caribbeans, Black Americans, they're interested. They already watch our content. So of course they're going to watch diasporic content because they have friends and partners and neighbors that reflect that. So I just was like, why is this not registering? But again, I think it goes back to my initial point of like perspective, right? If you don't have a lot of Africans in decision-making positions, they're not going to really get it. Or you're hiring only people who are continental Africans who are already fighting for their own piece of the pie in this whole, you know, marginalized space.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Everybody's trying to get on. Like, if you don't have Nigerian Americans in decision-making positions that can advocate for these things, it's going to be even more challenging. But I don't want to be put in a box to speak exclusively for a community that I did not have an upbringing growing up in, you know, in terms of lens and gaze. I'm not doing that. I'm Nigerian American, And that's the point of view I'm going to tell my stories from.
So let's talk about your story. So you have a couple of films. So I know the second generation wedding, which is what Kafo was inspired by.
Yes.
Right. And then Antu Jacob's film.
Yeah.
What was it? Love and Submission. Right. Yeah. Yes. So talk a little bit about like, so which one was first? Because it was Love and Submission.
I made Privilege Unhinged. That was my first film. That was a dark comedy. And then I made Second Generation Wedding. And then I made and then I directed. I did not create that. I directed it. Love and Submission. Yeah.
And so tell us about like Privilege Unhinged, like as your first film, like, you know, the process of making the film and what inspired the story that you decided to tell in that film.
Sure. Honestly, it was cathartic because I was so frustrated with my workplace. And I just was like, you know, and I started to just channel those emotions into a script and like, you know, of course, like flipped it around and changed a lot of things. So that's what that was. It wasn't like ethnicity specific. It was more of like Black woman specific. I made that and I didn't know how I was going to raise the money and I knew I had to crowdfund and I didn't know how to, but I had a classmate from high school who successfully fundraised for her album, like about like $30,000 or something like that. So I reached out to her because she consulted people and she helped me out and I was able to raise $12K and I shot my movie.
So you said your classmate from college, from high school?
From high school.
Okay, because I know somebody who did something similar. I'm trying to figure out if it's the same person. Okay, but you said she used that money to fund her music project.
Yes, she's a musician. Okay. Yep.
So it's a different person.
Okay.
But okay, so which one is it that screened in Love and Submission screened in over 60 theaters?
Yes. So I'll tell you about the trajectory of all this. So Privilege Unhinged screened at like several festivals, including Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival, which is Oscar qualifying. And then it also got distribution with Shorts TV, which is co-owned by AMC Network. So that film did pretty well in terms of like my first movie. The second film, Second Generation Wedding, screened at a number of festivals as well, including Bronze Lens and Black Girls Rock Film Festival. And then it got distribution on Quayle TV, and it's also going to get distribution somewhere else that I can't disclose yet, but I'm excited about. And then the last film, Love and Submission, that film got into a program called Full Spectrum Features. The tongue twister. Anyway, they are a program that is a conglomerate of various collectives that are connected to like industry decision makers and platforms and things like that. But anyway, they have relationships with art house theaters. So they did a program where Love and Submission amongst some other films were selected to screen in 60 art house independent theaters throughout the United States. So that film also, and then we also screened at New York African Film Festival. I mean, we screened at a lot of Africana Film Festival. We screened at a ton of film festivals. But yeah, it's been a great ride as a director for sure.
That's amazing. So can you talk a bit about your strategy for getting your films this level of visibility, right? So a lot of filmmakers will, you know, whether it's a short or feature, that the work is like paying all these submission fees and submitting it to every possible festival. Was that your strategy, or did you kind of utilize some other means based on your experience in the industry?
Sure. So my first film I just submitted to her. I mean, and I went crazy. But on my second film, I was like, you know what? I know who this audience, who's going to respond to this. You know, people are like, oh, apply to Sundance. I was like, Sundance ain't screening this. So I was like, I'm going to send it to targeted festivals, African-centered, Black-centered festivals, and it worked. I mean, I screened that. You know, I sent it to some others, but the ones that admitted, you know, where I got admitted into were primarily the ones that I focused on. And then for Love and Submission, we did the same thing. Like, let's just go to the targeted audience for this project. And we still were able to get traction and visibility, right? Like, it helped us get the word out about these projects and about us as content creators at the end of the day, which is all that matters. And then we were able to foster substantial professional relationships at festivals. So yeah.
Beautiful. And I just want to plug Norfest. Norfest is
Norfest. Oh my God. I can't believe I didn't mention. I'm so sorry.
No, no, no,
Yes.
no, yeah, because we screen. I was just gonna say we screened Love and Submission in Northfest 2020 as well.
Yes,
Beautiful.
and then you screened Second Generation at Yale African Film Festival in
Yes,
2019. Yep.
yes.
Yes.
So, if you want to see some of the films that we are screening right now, you can go to northfest.eventbrite.com and get tickets to see some of the amazing films. I want to shout out Vineyard. I want to shout out Breath. I want to shout out Free to Be Free, just incredible visionary, liberating films. We have very little time left, so I'm gonna just make sure that we touch on your learnings, right? So, you've already shared a ton of just strategy, just in thinking about how you get your work out. I want you to talk a little bit about your biggest learnings in this industry, especially in terms of like building a career, building a career as an authentic storyteller, and what kind of secrets you wish you knew, 20 years ago, or however long ago.
I would say that indie short films can be made for a reason. Like that 12K, I could have made 2 movies. You know what I mean? You just got to be creative about how you use your budget. But I didn't know that at the time, so whatever. So that's one. Another thing I would say is your personal trajectory is going to inform your professional trajectory. They're intertwined, especially as an artist. So you have to be committed to doing the work on the things that you want to improve about yourself, learn the things that you want to learn about yourself. Don't delay that process. That's going to make you a better artist. It's going to refine your perspective and your mission. And don't be afraid to shake the table, right? Like if the discovery of who you are unveils family secrets or makes you engage in things that people are not familiar with, like delve into it. It's going to expand how you express yourself, which again is going to inherently make you a better artist. Another thing I would say is that this industry is very political, and relationships matter, and how people see you is a big thing, no matter how you feel about yourself. So at the end of the day, you have to determine how much value you're going to put on that, right? Like, because people will be like, oh, Lonnie should do this and Lonnie should do that. And I've said no, and they're looking at me like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, it doesn't work for me. And if that means that it's going to delay or in your eyes or make my ascension into this business slower than what you think it should be, I'm content with that because I need to sleep with myself at the end of the night, and I'm not going to do anything that doesn't make sense. I've had a lot of people who try to convince me to make decisions. I'm like, I'm not doing that. No. Like
that speaks to my next question in terms of how you take care of yourself, and kind of a lot of people don't have that courage to be themselves, their authentic selves. And for those of us who do, it tends to come from a very deep place. So I just want you to speak a little bit about how you cultivate that sort of love for yourself, and that authenticity, whether it's your spiritual practice, whether it's the community around you, just a little bit of just share a little bit of your kind of practice in that realm.
Sure. I would say therapy, self-work, right? I mean, I'm a work in progress. I am not perfect, but I have done a lot of work on myself and have learned how to identify my weak points and do quote unquote the shadow work, which is like encompassing in my spiritual journey. I also feel like my spiritual journey has also aided me in identifying how to take care of myself and how to fortify the parts of me that need to be enriched and validated. And then also, this business has made me a very good judge of character. I am, you gotta really, that's another thing that I should have mentioned. Everybody ain't your friend, right? But you also don't gotta make enemies along the way. So you just gotta make sure you delineate between how you distribute energy in relationships. Because again, this is a relationship-based business. So you may not be crazy about somebody, but they might be very influential or connected to people that you really love on a professional, personal level. So how do you manage relationships where you're still being kind and still being cooperative and being collaborative in the way that you navigate your career? Really, really important. And I think those are forms of taking care of yourself, because if you could see the good in others, then you should be able to see it in yourself. And then also just make sure you work out, eat, sleep. Keep it simple, right? Like, when you feel like, all right, I'm doing too much, take a break. And if people say, where you been? I just had to take a few days off. It's okay. Like, the work will be there tomorrow.
Is this part of what liberation means? That's my last kind of question for you, and then we'll talk about how you support folks in your consulting business. But what liberation means to you, right? Is it through your work that you kind of experience liberation, or what does liberation mean to you, and Black liberation even more specifically?
I think Black liberation is something that like something that I do, like the work that I do would inspire Black liberation, right?
Mhm.
Like I would propose, I would present ideas and concepts that would prompt people to consider what Black liberation looks like, whether consciously or unconsciously. So I have to recognize the responsibility and influence I have as a content creator, whether it's indie or in mainstream. People are consuming your content and it's impacting them. How do you want it to impact them? You don't have control over that, but you can at least give them a direction to go in, right? And then also being able to explain the story and inspiration behind your work, I think also aids in the impact that you want to leave behind. So you got to know what your story is and how you explain that story in a way that allows people to connect and think deeply about the worlds around them. And I'm also someone that is very interested in analyzing my environment. Sociology classes also are great. It's another thing I wanted to mention because they help you to look at life and society in a different way. But I don't know. I just think it's really important for us to think critically about life. Life should be taken seriously. I'm not saying you should be serious all the time, but you should be committed to making your life one that has meaning and making your life one that has impact. That's how you know you are moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. 10 thumbs up.
Thank you.
So in terms of how you support organizations, so for those watching, Black Genius inspired Black Genius University. Black Genius was inspired by the amazing geniuses around me who truly and deeply inspire me. And we decided, with my daughter and all the beautiful children around me, that we would create Black Genius University and teach them life skills, things that would, help them to truly thrive and, be abundant and fulfill their God-given purpose using their God-given gifts. And so all proceeds from Black Genius podcasts go to Black Genius University. And so for the geniuses that we have on this platform, they make their time available to those of you who are watching who may need some support. Maybe you're a filmmaker or a storyteller who needs to become a member of Black Film Space. Maybe you're an organization or a studio that needs consultation on diversity. So tell us a little bit about how you support organizations and how they can get in touch with you. And how you what would be your dream projects to work on to support organizations?
Okay, well, it's twofold. So I'm the co-founder of Black Film Space, which is a nonprofit that supports content creators of African descent. So we're always looking to, of course, recruit new members, in addition to finding platforms that are interested in creating pipeline programs or programming opportunities to aid us in educating and preparing Black people for a very competitive industry, such as film and entertainment overall. So definitely my baby. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into Black Film Space. And I'm really, really proud of where we are 7+ years later. The other prong of that question, sorry, is I have a business, One Square Media, where I consult artists and creatives, especially with my production, development, casting background. If they want to develop ideas, concepts, I can help consult and advise them on how to do that. So yeah, I would say those are probably the various ways in which I give back or support other creatives.
Okay, beautiful. And we will share links on how you can work with Lande in our description.
Yeah.
So just any last words for aspiring storytellers, aspiring filmmakers? I know you have to go to your next thing.
I would say your persistence is going to win out in the end. So just ride the low waves, they come and go. It's okay. It's life. And I know that's not like the sexiest advice, but it's the realest advice because
Right.
people
Always.
give up too early.
Mhm.
And I'm a Taurus, so I'm gonna see things to the end. So,
Mhm.
the reason why I mean, that's part of why I have staying power, but it's also just being pragmatic about the process. Like, it's not sexy, like it's gonna take a while.
Mhm.
But if you're committed to your mission, like I was saying before, which is to have impact, you'll see you'll see it along the way, you
Mhm.
know. So just remember that when you're wondering, is this going to happen? Am I on the right path? What am I doing? Blah 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 blah. People are telling you, oh, you're off. You're not. You should do it this way. You should do it that way.
Mhm.
Just remember, you know, the basic goal of why you want to do what you want to do. So yeah.
Thank you. I know that touched somebody or some bodies. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And
Thank
thank you for sharing
you.
your story with us and your
Of
genius
course.
with us and your genius with the world. And I look forward to doing much more together in the coming days. So
Likewise.
thank you so much. And we will talk very soon. And please snap and like and give
Thank
Lande
you for
all the
having
love.
me. Thank you for having me. Thanks so much.
All right. Take it easy.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. I gotta remember how to come back to myself. Okay, so that's it for today's Black Genius. I just want to make sure that you understand how it fits into the ecosystem that is Noir Lab. So our work is to inspire and operationalize liberation, and that means for you individually from within, helping you to activate your highest gifts, your highest self, helping you to understand your genius, your glory, your beauty. And when you see aspirational stories like Lande's and others that we've shared with you and others that we will share with you in the future, that activates your genius. It reminds you of your power, of your glory, and gives you a little bit more juice to take the next step in becoming your highest self. So the ways that we do that is through our newsletter, through this podcast as well, and as well through Noir Fest. Black Dreams on Screen, where we curate aspirational Black stories. Lucky for you, Noirfest Week went to Noirfest Month. We're still screening films, so you can see Noirfest films at noirfest.eventbrite.com. If you're an organization or a community that wants to cultivate your teams, cultivate your community, bring your people closer together, you can take advantage of our Ubuntu Agile services. When you go to portal2ai.noirlab or portalx.space, you can learn more about Ubuntu Agile. And in that cultivating of your team and of your community, you get to watch films, you get to have retreats, and you get to learn some technology and take advantage of our technology services. So these are all the different ways that you can take advantage of the amazing ecosystem that we have built here at Noir Labs and the services that we provide to our larger community. So thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed my time with you, and I hope to see you very soon on the next Black Genius. Take care. Stay blessed.